Welcome back. I'm here to read to you Chapter 2, Accidental Yet Unexplainable. The Willow Crest Fire Department had never seen an incident like the one at St. Andrew's Children's Hospital. The firefighters were called in the middle of the night to view the damage from a reported explosion, but when they arrived, they had no idea what they were looking at. There weren't any flames to extinguish. There was hardly any debris to clear, and the remaining walls of the hospital weren't blackened or singed by the alleged blast. As far as they could tell, the women's bathroom hadn't exploded as much as just vanished. "It's not damaged, it's just missing," one firefighter said to another. "If there had been an explosion, this place would be covered in bits of porcelain, but there's not a piece of the bathroom anywhere. The hospital staff swear a fully functional bathroom was right there just a few hours ago," the second firefighter said. "If it wasn't an explosion, what could have removed it so quickly?" The firefighters asked around the hospital, but no one had witnessed the phenomenon, further complicating the strange situation. They checked the grounds surrounding the hospital in case the bathroom had been detached by some sort of tractor, but there were no tracks on the ground. "What should I put in the report?" the first firefighter asked the second. "The hospital's insurance company is going to need something from us, but I can't exactly say the bathroom got up and walked away." "Right, accidental yet unexplainable," the second firefighter said. "I think this case is above our pay grade. They're going to need an investigation to get to the bottom of this, a thorough investigation." With no further assessment to make, the firefighters taped off the area and gave the hospital manager the contact information for a destruction investigator who lived in the next town. The specialist wasn't available for another week, so the missing bathroom remained a giant and mysterious hole until his arrival. The scene was completely untouched until midnight on the eve of the inspector's visit. A 15-year-old young man stepped over the yellow tape and had a seat in the doorway that led to nowhere. His eyes were baggy, his heart was heavy, and he hunched as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. Deep in thought, he gazed through the large hole at the buildings of downtown Willowcrest in the distance. The young man had hoped that if he returned to the missing bathroom, it might provide answers to the questions haunting him. Unfortunately, all the answers had disappeared with the bathroom. "Hey, Connor." A 16-year-old young woman suddenly peeked into the hospital from outside, almost giving Connor a heart attack. She wore a purple beanie and had blonde hair with a streak of pink and blue in the front. "Bree," Connor said, "what are you doing here? I thought you were grounded for running away again." "Oh, I am," Bree said. "I'm not allowed to leave the house until college. I've never seen my parents so furious. As far as they know, I just snuck out to visit family in Connecticut. I can't imagine how they'd react if they knew we flew to Germany and back." "What if you get caught sneaking out?" Connor asked. "Don't worry, I won't," Bree said. "I've been sneaking out of the house since I was 8. I put a wax head on my pillow and leave a cassette playing of someone snoring in case my parents check on my bedroom." "That's both scary and impressive," Connor said. Bree shrugged. "It's just like Laurel Thatcher Ulrich said, 'Well-behaved women seldom make history.'" She climbed into the hospital, carefully stepping on the remaining floorboards so she didn't fall into the basement below, and had a seat next to Connor in the doorway. "You weren't home, so I figured I'd find you here," she said. "I wanted to take one last look at the damage before the inspector starts digging around tomorrow," he said. "You know, just in case there was something we missed." "Any luck finding Alex?" "Not at all," Connor said with a sigh. "It's been a week since she disappeared, and we haven't found a single clue where she went. My mom and stepdad have looked all over town, but there's no sign of her. Jack, Red, and Lester are searching the fairy tale world as we speak. But so far they haven't returned with anything." "It's so bizarre," Bree said. "I barely know her, but it seems so out of character for her to run off like that. Has she done anything like this before?" Connor's knee-jerk reaction was to defend his sister's reputation, but the more he thought about it, the more he remembered it wasn't entirely unlike her to go missing. "Sort of," he recalled. "Alex went through this weird phase not too long ago. She would get overwhelmed about something and lose control of her powers, but the circumstances were so different. She was really stressed out and easy to provoke." "What was she stressed out about?" "It was back when we were searching the fairy tale world for our Uncle Lloyd," he explained. "All of her hunches about him were right, but no one wanted to believe her. The fairy tale council thought she was becoming reckless, so they ordered her to stop looking for him. Alex got so upset she disappeared into a ball of flames, but she resurfaced a couple of days later." "Oh," Bree said, "maybe it isn't out of character." "Disappearing maybe, but she's not the type who abandons her friends in their hour of need," Connor said. Things were finally looking up for a change. We had just recruited all the characters from my stories. We were finally ready to fight the literary army in the fairy tale world. So why would she vanish now? It makes no sense. The detective in me wants to believe your uncle had something to do with it, especially if he was the reason behind her previous outburst, Bree said. But Emmerich and I were with him the entire time he was in the other world. Alex never laid eyes on him. If she was provoked, it was by someone else. Connor nodded. And that's what I've been trying to figure out. Alex's behavior puzzled them as much as the vanished bathroom puzzled the fire department. And just like the firefighters, they knew they were missing a piece of the story. Unfortunately, there was no specialist they could call to help them solve Alex's disappearance. How are all the characters doing, Bree asked. They're a little stir-crazy from being cooped up in the commissary, Connor said. We have to let them outside for fresh air and shifts so no one around here gets suspicious. Bob has been teaching the merry men and the lost boys how to play football at the park to burn off some energy. My mom has rewrapped all the mummies with fresh bandages so the commissary smells a lot better. The cyborgs have blown every fuse in the hospital from using the outlets too much. The siblings have been patrolling downtown at night just to get their hero fix, so the city's crime rate has gone down. And the Starboardia pirates found a television and have been watching I Love Lucy reruns nonstop. It annoys everyone else, but at least it keeps them occupied. I'm glad everyone's hanging in there, Bree said. I can't imagine what it's like for you. Being in the cemetery of the undead for a couple of hours was surreal enough for me, but you've been surrounded by your creations for days. It's gotta feel like a trippy family reunion. Once you've seen your elderly grandmother slay a dragon, everything else pales in comparison, Connor laughed. Speaking of family reunions, did Cornelia and Emmerich get to Germany safely? It was so kind of her to offer him a ride. Thankfully, Bree said, Cornelia said Emmerich and Frau Himmelsbach were very happy to be reunited. They're also moving to Australia to get as far away from Neuschwanstein Castle as possible. Wenda and Frenda had been stranded in Bavaria since your Uncle Lloyd kidnapped us, so Cornelia picked them up and flew them back to Connecticut yesterday. I was amazed to learn how well Cornelia handled it all, Connor said. Usually people freak out when they learn about other dimensions, but she barely flinched. Bree forced a smile and nodded. She hadn't been completely honest with Connor. He knew Bree was in Connecticut when she learned Emmerich had been kidnapped. He knew Cornelia had generously offered to fly Bree to Germany so that they could help Emmerich's mother look for him. And he knew they happened to be at Neuschwanstein Castle when Uncle Lloyd brought Emmerich back to the other world. However, Connor had been so overwhelmed by Alex's disappearance, Bree thought it was best to leave out the other details. She never mentioned why she had gone to visit her family in Connecticut, that she discovered that they were part of a secret league known as the Sisters Grimm, or their extensive history of tracking portals into the fairy tale world. Bree hoped a better time would present itself to fill Connor in, but the longer Alex was gone, the more inappropriate it became. At Cornelia's age, that's not a whole lot of that shocks her, Bree said. In fact, when you get a minute, I'd love to tell you more about my trip to her. Bree was interrupted by the sound of footsteps coming from the hallway behind them. A moment later, Trebella appeared at the doorway of the missing bathroom. The young troll queen immediately crossed her arms and scolded at the sight of Bree and Connor in the same location. Well, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't keep her away from your man, Trebella quipped. Connor rolled his eyes. What do you want, Trebella? I want to let you know that Bean Sprout the Frog Mistress and Plucky McGee have returned, she said. Who? Bree asked. She means that Jack, Red, and Lester are back from the fairy tale world, Connor said, and quickly jumped to his feet. Maybe they know something about Alex. Trebella, will you let my mom and Bob know? They're working a night shift on the 3rd floor. I am not your errand girl, Butterboy, Trebella said. There will be no more favors between us until you're ready to commit. Fine, Connor said. Bree, will you please get my mom and Bob? Fine, I'll fetch my butter-in-laws, Trebella said, but please stop begging. I hate seeing how vulnerable you become without me. Connor and Bree ran down the hall toward the commissary as Trebella fetched Charlotte and Bob. They found all their friends from Oz, Neverland, and the Sherwood Forest, the Land of Stories, and Connor short stories, The Adventures of Blimp Boy, The Siblings, and Galaxy Queen, huddled around Jack and Red. The only ones who weren't paying attention to their arrival were the pirates from Starboardia, who never looked away from the television. Are they still watching that ditzy woman? Red asked. The other world may be advanced, but it sure leads to some awful habits. Well, Connor said, getting straight to the point, did you find my sister? Jack slowly shook his head. No, he said, we looked all over the place that we thought she would be. The ruins of the fairy palace, the giant's castle in the sky, the clock tower of the charming palace, but we couldn't find a trace of her. The news was so disappointing Connor had to sit down. If Alex wasn't in the fairy tale world, he didn't know where else to look. His train of thought shifted from thinking of places she might be to worrying she'd never be found. I'm sorry you didn't find Alex, but I'm so glad you're back, Goldilocks told Jack as she cradled their newborn son. It's a miracle you weren't spotted, even at Lester's heights. Jack went to his wife's side and kissed Hero on the forehead. Red gave Goldilocks a large hug from behind, as if the sentiment were meant for her. Goldilocks, you're back on your feet, Red pointed out. Is it safe for you to be walking around again so soon after giving birth? Red, I had a baby, not a whale, Goldilocks said. How is the fairy tale world? Are the conditions any better? It's exactly as we left it, Jack told the room. The citizens from all the kingdoms are still being held in Swan Lake, if they're not building monuments to the emperors. The literary army is lined up on the lawns of the Northern Palace, but all they do is march all day, as if they're waiting for something to happen. It sounds like they're preparing for battle, Goldilocks said. They couldn't be expecting us, could they? I imagine it's just a scare tactic to keep the civilians from rebelling, Jack said. They still haven't discovered the royal families in the abandoned mine, so I doubt they've caught wind of us. How could they? And the others in the mine, are they still made of stone? Goldilocks asked. Unfortunately so, Jack said. Same goes for the Fairy Council. Oh, it's a terrible sight, Red said, and shuddered at the thought. All their faces were frozen in the most unattractive expressions of terror. If someone turns me into stone, I hope they have the decency to tell me something amusing beforehand. What about the creature that did it? The Tin Woodman asked. Was there any sign of who or what it is? They wouldn't be here if they had seen it, Bluebeau said, and recalled the terrifying moments he had spent in its presence. All it took was one glance and boom, everyone went stiff as a rock. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't closed my eyes. And I'm going to stop there and I'll start the second half of the chapter in the next video. I'll see you guys then.